Okay, this part is on chapter 2. So, use the distributed property. So the distributed property is if you have a number we'll use 5, and you have parentheses, and you have x plus y on the inside of the parentheses. You need to multiply everything that's inside the parentheses by 5. You need to distribute the 5 through to both terms. There are 2 terms. So for letter A, there's a 4 on the outside. So you need to multiply each term inside the parentheses by 4. There are 2 terms inside. So this is going to be 4 times 2x plus 4 times negative 4y. So you have your 2x, negative 4y, and the 4 is in both. So now we're going to simplify both of these. So 4 times 2x is 8x, plus 4 times negative 4 is negative 16y. So instead of adding a negative, I'm going to write it as 8x minus 16y. Now at the end, can you simplify this? Can you do 8 minus 16? You can't, because they're not like terms. They don't have the same variables and exponents. X and a y can't combine them. So this is my final answer. Letter B. We have 6x minus 3 times the quantity 2 minus 5x. In a problem like this, what you want to do is we're going to underline the part that we're going to distribute first. So take this negative 3 with it. So I'm going to copy down the 6x. But now I'm going to distribute the negative 3 to both terms. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative 5x is going to be a positive. It's a positive because a negative times negative is a positive. Plus 15x. So in the end, I combine like terms. I have 3 terms right here. 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. And 2 of them are the same. 2 of them both have x's. So I'm going to add the coefficients. The coefficients are 6 and 15. So the coefficients are 21 x's. And then I'm left with the constant, negative 6. You can't combine these two because they're not like terms. One has an x and the other one doesn't. Letter C. You're going to have 2 sets of distributed properties going. So I'm going to multiply negative 2 times 5, which is negative 10, and negative 2 times a, which is a negative 2a. Then the second part is going to be the negative 6a's, and then the negative 6 times negative 3 is plus 18. Now I have 4 terms. So I'm going to combine the terms that are the same. I'm going to combine the terms that have the same variables. So these two are both a's. So negative 2a's and negative 6a's is negative 8a's. And negative 10 plus 18 is 8. I can't combine these anymore because they're not the same terms. And then down here, solving your equations. So to solve, you want to do the inverse of what's happening. So if I'm on the same side of x, so if I want to get x by itself, I have to get rid of this 4. So I have to subtract 4 from both sides. So x equals 12 minus 4, which is 8. Letter B, I want to get rid of the negative 7 because that's in the way of the y. So I'm going to add 7 to each side. So y equals 2. Letter C, I'm going to add 9 to each side. So a equals 12. Letter D, it looks like I want to add 4, but there's no space in between here, so it's negative 4 times k. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. So K equals -5. In letter E, it's W divided by 6. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. So it's W equals -3 times 6, which is -18. And then F, I'm going to multiply both sides by -9. So these two cancel out, and I get K equals -2 times -9 is +18. We also did solving inequalities. So remember, you flip the sign of the inequality when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So for letter A, to get A by itself, you need to add 3. So it's A is less than 2. So if you have, when you have an open dot, you use an open dot like this. If you have a greater than or less than, you're going to use a closed dot when it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, and that looks like this. So this is going to be an open dot at 2, make a circle, open circle, in numbers that are less than 2. So numbers that are less than 2 would be 1. 1 is less than 2, so 1's over here, so you're going to shade on the side of 1. Letter B, to solve for y, you subtract 5 from each side. So it's y is greater than or equal to 3. So make a dot, a closed dot at 3, and you're going to shade to the right because these numbers are greater than or equal to 3. Letter C, you're going to multiply both sides by 5. You're multiplying by a positive number, so you don't change the direction of the side. Even though this number is negative, since you're multiplying by a positive, you don't change the direction. So it's C is less than or equal to -15. So make a closed circle at -15. In numbers that are less than -15, like -16 is less than, would be over here, and you're going to the left. And then letter D, this is one there's no space in between, so it's multiplying, so you're going to do the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So you divide both sides by -2. So it's T is greater. Now it's greater because we had to divide by -2. And we divide by -2, we're dividing by a negative. So that means we have to switch the inequality. That's why it turns into greater. So it's greater than 5. So this is going to be an open dot at 5. And then you're going to, numbers that are greater than 5 are 6. So 6 is over here, so you're shading that way. The last part of chapter 2, make sure we know the properties. So the commutative property, I'll write them out over here. The commutative property I talked about is kind of like you're commuting or traveling to and from something. So if you're going from A to B and B to A, you're just switching the order. So commutative property would look like A plus B equals B plus A. That's the commutative property of addition. The commutative property of multiplication is A times B equals B times A. So you can change the order. You can change the order for adding and multiplying, but you cannot change the order for subtracting and dividing. The second property is the associative property. The associative property is where you're changing the grouping. So you could have A and B and then add C, or you could add B and C first and then add A. You could multiply A times B first and then multiply that by C, or you could multiply B times C first and then multiply it by A. Again, these two properties both work for multiplying and adding, but they don't work for subtraction and division. And the last one is identity. So the identity is, what do you do to add? What number do you add to get the original number? So if you had 5, how would you get 5? What number would you add? Well, you would add a 0. So that 0 is the additive identity. If you had 5 and you want to have an answer of 5, what do you multiply 5 by? Well, you multiply it by 1. So 1 is the multiplicative identity. So we'll look at A, B, and C over here. So number 4, 6 plus 4 is 4 plus 6. Which property does this look like? Well, we're changing the order. We're changing the order, so this is called commutative. And then letter B, letter B, you're multiplying by 1. So this is identity. And the last one, you're keeping the order the same, but you're changing the grouping. First, 4 times 5 is together, and then 3 times 4 is together. So this is called the associative.